Hello, I'm Adam Wren,
And I'm Jordain Carney, and it is Friday, June 27th.
and this is the Playbook Podcast. As you heard, we have Politico's own Congress reporter extraordinaire with us today. Thanks for being here, Jordan.
Thanks for having me on.
Without further ado, here are the topics driving the day. First, the main thing we're watching today takes us to Capitol Hill, where the so-called megabill continues its winding path amid roadblocks in Congress, and a Senate vote is anticipated as early as tomorrow. But President Trump has been downplaying the setbacks and says the July 4th deadline stands. More on that in a moment, though. The second thing we're watching today is the potential flood of major Supreme Court deadlines. We are tracking any number of answers to big questions. Those include whether President Trump can implement changes to birthright citizenship while the issue is being challenged in lower courts, whether requiring age verification to access internet pornography infringes on adults' constitutional free speech rights, and whether parents' inability to opt out of their children's engagement with some diverse children's books violates the First Amendment. There's also a 3-year case regarding congressional redistricting in Louisiana. You can follow all of that at Politico.com on our SCOTUS live blog. The third story we're following takes us to Iran. You might have seen a very combative Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth presser at the Pentagon on Thursday. Hegseth, of course, is a former Fox News contributor. He used a Thursday morning press conference to deliver a blistering and extended attack on the press, lashing out at CNN, the New York Times, and other outlets. In his rebuke, he accused them of distorting a preliminary Defense Intelligence Agency report that suggested the strikes only set back Iran's nuclear program by months. We're also tracking, related to that, a possible War Powers resolution vote today at 6 p.m. on the Hill. And we're looking forward to our colleague Jonathan Martin, our politics bureau chief, exclusive interview with former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who hopes that the Iran strikes are a teachable moment for Donald Trump on interventionist foreign policy. We won't hold our breath on that. The biggest thing everyone is talking about today is the big, beautiful bill. Jordan, where do things stand right now?
Yeah, so Senate Majority Leader John Thune had hoped they were going to be able to take an initial vote today. He has not technically closed the door to that possibility, but Republicans that we talked to acknowledge that Saturday is going to be the absolute earliest they can vote, and that's for a couple of reasons. There are currently enough Senate Republicans who will not vote to proceed because they have problems with the bill that Thune is still kind of trying to work things out.
Let's zero in on that last part. Walk us through the senators on the GOP side to watch here. And is the ranks of those who are opposing this getting longer or shorter?
So the number who are actively opposed are probably, let's say, the same-ish. You have a much larger group, though, that have issues. They might not be willing to say, like, I will vote no, but you have several Republicans, some who are no, some who would probably be no's if push came to shove on the floor, who want changes to the Medicaid language, very specifically the provider tax, which states use to fund their Medicaid accounts. It helps rural hospitals. The concern is that the Senate language, which would incrementally scale back the provider tax, is going to really hurt rural hospitals. So you have that group, and that's a pretty sizable group. And even that group alone, for example, would keep Thune from being able to proceed. You also still have the Ron Johnsons of the world who are not a yes yet. His concerns are obviously spending, and the White House is really trying to get him on board. And then, the perennial no vote, shall we call it, who is Rand Paul.
There was also a meeting yesterday between Senate Majority Leader John Thune and President Donald Trump. Jordan, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Trump, now that he is back, I guess in the words of Josh Hawley on terra firma after his trip, has been both reaching out to individual senators like Hawley, like Bernie Moreno, and telling them that he wants the House provider tax language. And then Thune went to the White House yesterday evening and told me when he got back that they talked through a number of issues on the bill. Trump is still very firmly wanting it by July 4th, which for a whole host of reasons is going to be quite a scramble. And I asked Thune, is your perception, that Trump wants the House provider tax language. And his read was Trump wants whatever will get the bill to his desk, basically.
Is Thune performing up to or exceeding expectations in Trump's view, do you think, on this?
I feel like certainly before he became majority leader, maybe the years before, they had a pretty, at times, rocky relationship, maybe from the Trump to Thune side, because of some of the comments, for example, that Thune made around January 2021. But Thune and I think his team have worked pretty hard in the run-up to him becoming majority leader. And now we kind of track how frequently they meet, for example. But he is in pretty much daily contact at this point with Trump because he understands that he's going to need Trump to help get some of these guys on board, especially the Mike Lees, the Rick Scotts, the Ron Johnson, who really maybe don't love this bill, but also don't necessarily want to stand in the way of Trump's big priority.
Is this likely to be Trump's last big legislative accomplishment before the midterms? Or are we going to see more after this?
This is certainly the biggest one. I think it's very fair to call it the party's signature legislative issue. And if you look kind of down the line at what the rest of this year is, it's funding the government, which is going to be a huge fight. Certainly the NBA is a priority for Republicans, but this bill is a lot of the things that Trump promised and a lot of his campaign promises. So this is his big priority, and that helps him urge Republicans who might not love every detail to kind of fall in line.
Jordan, I've been talking to some Democrats with various campaigns, whether it's the party campaign operations or individual candidates, 2028 presidential candidates, others. And it seems like this is sort of maybe the first moment in Trump 2.0 where Democrats can have kind of a substantive argument to take away from this piece of legislation if it indeed passes in its current or a close to form, where they can really make an argument and take an argument into the midterms. What are you hearing from Democrats on the Hill about this legislation and about how they see it factoring into the 2026 midterms?
I think it's a pretty fair assessment, whether it's the Medicaid language or they're really hammering home this idea of tax cuts for the wealthy, which Republicans will say, actually, hey, that's not what this does. That they really feel like this will give them an issue in 2026. I would say you've heard concerns from Republicans. We scooped earlier this week that Thom Tillis in a private Senate GOP lunch told his colleagues that if you go forward with this Medicaid language, the provider tax language, as it currently exists, he will not be sitting in the Senate GOP lunchroom after 2026 because he's going to lose his reelection. So I think Republicans, especially Republicans who are in cycle, are aware of the political dynamics. I think Democrats are gonna be like they already are, right? They're already sort of trying to position Susan Collins, who's in cycle, and let's see who Democrats get to run against her. Thom Tillis, who's certainly in cycle, and going to be watching how they vote and using it against them between now and next November.
Excellent. Well, Jordan, what a treat to have you here. Godspeed. Have a Celsius for us.
Have some coffee. Lots of coffee.
For more on this, read Playbook in the morning and visit Politico.com. We often try to end the show with something lighthearted from the Playbook newsletter. And today we're wishing a happy birthday to New Hampshire Governor Kelly Ayotte. It's the birthday that all potential GOP 2028 presidential candidates need to memorize, write in your black books, put onto your Google calendars, and wish her a happy birthday before 2027 and 2028. Send us, as always, your Playbook tips, birthdays, and spotted moments to playbook@politico.com. Jordan, thanks so much for being here. This was great.
No, thanks for having me on.
And that's all for today's Playbook Podcast. We have much more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. The show will be back Monday. Have a great weekend.